Fate and destiny weave many threads throughout our lives. Particular events often seem without meaning, and it is only when stepping back does a bigger picture emerge. The individual strands, these seemingly random encounters and events, all knit together into a tapestry of our history. We begin to comprehend how everything connects and has a place, even if we don't understand the reasons. Sometimes it makes us see old threads in a new light, illuminating even greater mysteries lurking in our past. My childhood encounter with the unknown is one such loose thread that I still wonder where it eventually leads. The routine interview Steve and I had with Satya is another. As we unraveled her story over several sessions, we found so many threads knotted together that by the end of it, we still don't know what to think or believe. Satya was another patient Steve was interviewing for his thesis. She was larger than life, figuratively and metaphorically. A generously proportioned woman with a boisterous and loving personality. We barely had a chance to introduce ourselves before she gave us both a hug in greeting. She was the most unlikely candidate for MDD, that's major depressive disorder, or clinical depression. It was only when she started telling us her story did her demeanor change. She had grown up in a Cambodian orphanage with 6 other kids. Though she never knew her parents, her childhood there was mostly a happy one. She was given a good education, even better than most other kids in the public schools nearby, and had the chance to get into a good career in accounting. But growing up, she never felt her destiny was to be great or important to the world. Instead, she felt her contribution would be to teach others to be of great importance. So as a sign of appreciation for the opportunities that she had been given, she became a teacher for underprivileged kids. She loved her job and loved working with children, both her own and those in her care. She had been in and out of therapy since the funeral for Father Abraham, the patron of their orphanage growing up, about 2 years ago. A priest from Portugal, he had moved from place to place before settling in Cambodia to do his work. He was not just a father in title though. He had single-handedly raised 7 orphans, providing them with food, shelter, and education when the rest of the world had all but abandoned them. Though it was now over 20 years since she had left to start a family of her own, Abraham and the other orphans would always be her first real family. She still remembered the day she got that fateful call. She was preparing dinner, as fate would have it. Vinha de los, a traditional Portuguese dish of marinated pork, the way Abraham had first taught her. It was something she cooked once a month, not just because of the happy memories it brought her, but also because she was still experimenting with the recipe. After all these years, she still couldn't quite seem to get the taste and texture exactly as she remembered it the first time it was cooked for her. When she picked up the phone, it was Chana, her best friend from the orphanage. She immediately sensed that something was wrong with the quiet sobbing on the line. When told of Father's death, she had screamed and collapsed into an inconsolable heap for hours. She booked the first flight she could back to Cambodia to attend the funeral the following week. She joined Chana at the service, along with 3 other orphans that she had not seen for years: Afonso, Kong, and Raksa. It was a moving, if subdued, funeral. After the orphanage had closed down, Abraham had joined a small mission in a rural village, spending the rest of his days praying in solitude. They were the closest thing that Abraham had had to family. Most of the other attendees were strangers to Sucha. Afterwards, the old group of friends caught up to reminisce about their childhood and swap memories about Father. They marveled at his saintly patience in single-handedly educating 7 unruly children for how to prepare for life. Father Abraham had insisted that they should all speak English, not their native Cambodian language, as it would give them more opportunities for a better future. They laughed together about how they all discovered much later in life that Father had confused the 6 grammatical tenses of his native Portuguese when he taught in English, resulting in all of them adopting his quirky style of speech. They affectionately dubbed it Abrahanese. Soon, though, conversation turned to the 2 other orphans who were not present, Clemente and Jacquem. Both had died years earlier, their life cut all too short by fate and circumstance. Clemente was their eldest brother, and he was fiercely protective of them growing up. Though he sometimes abused his position of being the oldest, as young boys tend to do, he would always be there to look after the kids when Father had to leave the orphanage on business. Sucha remembered once during the water festival, a boy had stolen her toy water gun that Father had bought for her. Clemente tracked that boy down and broke his nose, spending a night in a prison cell for his efforts. That did little to change his ways, though. He was never shy of standing up for others, particularly the weak, and dispensing justice. So it was on one fateful night that he saw a beggar having his meager belongings stolen. He was stabbed from behind as he was trying to prevent the minor robbery. His life was extinguished over a fight for what amounted to 84 cents. Jacquem's death was no less tragic. He had taken his own life a few months earlier. Kong, his roommate, was the person to discover Jacquem's body after returning from his shift at the grocery store. Walking into the bathroom, he found Jacquem lying on the floor, along with an empty bottle of bleach tipped over beside him. Fumbling for the phone to call for help, the medics had arrived too late. The bleach had burned through his throat, esophagus, and stomach. At Jacquem's funeral, Kong had been too distraught to say much more. But by the time of Abraham's funeral, he was ready to reopen that wound. He admitted to the group that there was some more information he left out in his report to the police. That Jacquem was still alive when he walked in. He was on the floor, eyes bloodshot, and tears streaming down his face. When he spotted Kong, he struggled to mouth some words. Kong got close enough to hear him whisper, "We had 8 orphans. 8 orphans," before finally clenching his chest in pain and going into shock. That would have meant nothing to the police, but it immediately changed the mood of the group. A chill went down their spines. They had not spoken of it for years, but they each have always felt that there was an extra orphan in their group. None of them could ever remember seeing the 8th. They could not describe what he looked like or where he was from. For as long as they could remember, there was always 7 of them growing up with Father Abraham. But they all had an unshakable, unexplainable feeling that someone was missing. When they had first spoken to Abraham about it, he had laughed it off and asked the children to count themselves and see. It would always come to 7. When they had persisted in the questioning, it was the first and only time that they had seen Father get angry. He forbade them to ever mention it again and would punish anyone who spoke of it. He said he did not want the community thinking that he could not teach his children something as simple as counting to 10. Now that Father had gone, it was as if a taboo had been lifted. So they spent the night swapping the secret memories that they had each held on to for years. Kong started by confessing that he had felt there was an 8th from the very first day they arrived. On the old bus to the orphanage, he recalled that they were all paired up and all 8 passenger seats were filled. They could not have been an odd number of people. But the memory was so long ago, and they all had different memories of who sat next to whom. And everyone seemed accounted for. None of them could recall any person that didn't match the description of the 7. Roxa then stepped the group through the activities on the first day. It was such a mix of emotions for them, with so many activities. Being shown around the small orphanage, learning the rules, meeting the guard dogs, being assigned beds, cleaning their areas, even learning to cook their own lunch. By mid-afternoon, after chatting individually with Father, they were all exhausted and had an afternoon nap. They didn't wake up again until dinner time. But always, there were just 7 beds in our room, stated Afonso. That means only 7 of us, right? Let's see. 3 beds along the wall with the door. 4 beds on the other side. I don't think there would have been space for another bed, replied Roxa. There were big beds for little children though, argued Chana. If we pushed 2 of them together, 3 of us could have slept in that. Maybe, but the beds were never together, no? Father would never allow it. So that still means 7, retorted Alfonso. What if the 8th didn't need to sleep? Everyone went quiet and looked at Roxa. Well, I never told anyone but Father, Roxa continued. But on that first night, I couldn't sleep. I just stayed in bed, listening to you all sleep. I heard the door open. Then I saw a small boy at the door. I told him go back to bed, or Father will get mad, thinking it was one of you. But the boy turned around and vanished. I almost screamed, but I was too afraid to. I stayed under the blanket, wide awake until morning. Father told me it was just a bad dream. Oh Lord, I always thought the orphanage was haunted, admitted Shana. I always hated going to the shower by myself. I always felt like I was being watched. I first thought it was you boys, but many times I would see a shadow in the corner. It would dart away when I looked at it. Yeah, Jarquin did try and sneak a look once, but you know that one time Jarquin got in trouble for it? Asked Kong. It wasn't him. He was making sausages with me and the other boys for dinner. Father punished him severely with the cane, but he took it because he knew he was guilty from the time before. As the night progressed, they shared more and more stories of sightings. An extra face in the mirror. The sound of another person breathing heavily when they were alone. Satya stayed extra quiet, listening to each story with growing apprehension. Eventually, Chana noticed and asked her what's wrong. Why wasn't she talking? I too saw the eighth. I remember now, though I tried so hard to forget. Lord, I tried so hard to forget. Father told me it was just a bad dream, a nightmare, and to forget it, cried Sacha. I kept seeing the boy too. I thought maybe it was a spirit. I thought maybe he was lonely, so I tried to make friends with him. I said hello when I could sense him around me. He always disappeared at first, but over time, he stayed longer. He only comes out when you're alone. I thought that he was shy. I thought maybe he was hungry. So one night, I had left some food for him under the bed. That night, I was woken by someone breathing and hissing in my bed next to me. I looked over and I saw him. Then I screamed. I remember that night. You woke us all up and you wouldn't stop crying and you wouldn't tell us why. Shut up, the whole group hissed and whacked Kong on the head. Let Sacha finish. I saw him. Father made me try to forget, but I still remember. The boy, he was lying in the bed with me. Except he had no eyes, no tongue. When he opened his mouth, just horrible. A hissing sound. He had no arms or legs, just stumps and blood. He just lay there, looking at me, hissing in agony. Father said it was all a bad dream. He tried to make me forget. But I remember now, Sacha repeated, rocking backwards and forwards. I remember. I remember. I remember. It has been 2 years since that conversation, and Sacha still has no choice but to remember. Starting a few months ago, whenever she lies in bed with her eyes closed, she has heard the hissing beside her, and she has been too afraid to open her eyes. There are very few things more amazing than the human mind. A particular grouping of atoms, forged in starfire, arranged and connected in such a way that it yearns to comprehend the world around it. It's why every culture in history has shared stories by the campfire, in the hope that with each telling, our dark ignorance recedes just a bit further through enlightenment. From rubbing sticks for fire to launching spacecraft in less than 1,000 generations, our capacity for intelligence is overwhelmingly greater than what's needed for mere survival. It's as if we were meant for greater things. We are the very essence of the universe itself, given sentience to understand itself and its mysteries better. It is for this noble purpose that Steve pursued psychology, and I was eager to follow. One hypothesis Steve was researching was that the mind was basically software. Our reality is shaped by our thoughts, and our thoughts are shaped by words. So, the right combination of words could reprogram our minds and unlock our tremendous human potential. Words have much more power than people realize. To underline his point, Steve gave me the following demonstration. If I wanted you to do something, like to scratch yourself. I could ask you to do it, but you would have no reason to want to. I can't command you to scratch. But as you sit there, comprehending those words in your mind, you start to notice how your skin feels. You notice the different temperatures at different parts of your body. You notice how the fabric on your clothes rubs gently against your skin. You become aware of how it tickles the hairs on your arms and legs. The more you try to ignore it, the more you can feel it tingle. You can then sense it spreading to other parts of your body. And the more you try not to think about it, the stronger the sensation. The more you fight it, the stronger your urge to scratch. I couldn't help but to start subconsciously scratching myself all over. I still do, just thinking back to it. Where there was no feeling before, I had a very real physical and mental reaction, all because of some carefully chosen words. Steve explained that this is fundamentally how hypnosis works. Unlike the Hollywood portrayal though, it's not a sledgehammer to brainwash people against their will, but a feather, one that tips the scales of suggestibility enough to assist in recalling memories and focusing the powers of perception. To have the power of Sherlock Holmes, as Steve puts it. And Satya was a good subject to test this on. It didn't need Sherlock for the orphans to eventually put two and two together that night of their reunion. A missing orphan, a ghostly apparition with missing limbs, and mysterious meat. They realized Jacquem had come to the horrifying conclusion much earlier and was irrevocably traumatized by this sin that would forever stain him, enough to drink bleach in the misguided hope that it would cleanse his soul. His last words that night were not that they had 8 orphans, but that they had 8 orphans. What Sherlock was needed for was to uncover the mystery of why Father Abraham would commit such an atrocity, and who was the poor victim. Satya agreed to being hypnotized, with the appropriate safeguards in place, of course, to dig up more about her past. She went under a lot quicker and easier than Steve had expected. It seemed this wasn't the first time she had undergone the process. Once she was relaxed and compliant, we started asking her about her earliest memories at the orphanage. Thinking back to the first day, Satya recalled how excited she was to finally belong somewhere. She was happy to have new brothers and sisters to play with, and a father to teach her, to look after her. Abraham had spoken to each of the children separately before their afternoon nap. Satya was very nervous when it came to her turn. She couldn't stop fidgeting. Abraham was very gentle though, and his soothing voice calmed her down tremendously. He asked her about her trip to the orphanage, what she thought of the others, what she liked to eat. He said many things, and talked so much in that hypnotic voice of his that she had fallen asleep during her interview. She also recalled how the orphanage always suffered from these power outages. Every few days, the lights would flicker and dim. They wouldn't turn back on for a day or two. It was such a common occurrence that Father didn't even stop classes when interrupted by a blackout. For this reason, electrical appliances were scarce at the orphanage. They didn't have a television, air conditioning, or even a fridge. They grew vegetables in a large communal garden, and the few animals they had, chickens and a couple of goats, were kept for their eggs and milk rather than their meat. They ate economically during the week, but father always made sure that there was a bit of extra food for some extravagance on Sundays. Satya spoke fondly of how Abraham would teach them to cook using the gas stove and how to prepare vinadulos. At this point, she had a sudden realization of why her recipe was never quite the same. It lacked the faint taste of disinfectant. To ensure a supply of fresh meats for their feasts, it became clear that Abraham had to have kept the missing orphan alive for at least 7 months. Each week, Abraham would have sliced off some flesh, gave the meat to the children to cook with, and the bones to the dogs that guarded his quarters. He would have kept the orphan in his own quarters. It was the only place in the entire orphanage that was off limits. The children had never heard so much as a sound coming from his room. So, the tongue would have had to have been one of the first things removed. It allowed Abraham to get away with murder, leaving no evidence of his crime. Though, it was impossible for them to believe that father could be such a cold, calculating psychopath. Still, that was the picture which was forming as the threads were coming together. A loose end, though, was still the identity of the victim. We asked Satya to focus on the night she saw the ghostly boy in her bed. That night, after Satya woke up screaming, Abraham rushed into the children's room some moments later. He held her and comforted her, then asked her what was wrong. His face hardened for an almost imperceptible moment after she described the limbless horror. His face returned to its familiar warmth as he hugged her and said, "No, my child, dear Satya, just a nightmare it was, a bad dream. Come with me, my child. I'll help you forget." He asked the others to go back to sleep, and he took Satya to his locked quarters, the only time she was ever allowed in. She observed it was a very sparsely furnished room, an old bed on one end, a weathered writing desk beside it, and rows of books lining the opposite wall. She recalled the faint smell of disinfectant mixed with balms lingering in the room. The far corner of the room was partitioned with a large curtain, opened just enough to reveal a tattered mattress. Abraham made her lie down in his bed while he sat in the chair right next to it. He told her to close her eyes and kept repeating in his soothing voice that it was a dream and nothing more, that the tenseness of her muscles should slowly relax and melt away, that her shallow breathing should slow and deepen, that she should yawn, exhale her fears away, that she was feeling sleepy. Oh, so tired and sleepy, and her eyelids were becoming so heavy that she was too tired to be able to open them until morning, that she should forget about the boy as the sound of his voice became softer, so faint that it merged with her dreams, and she would wake up feeling happy and forget all about the night's troubles. Satya did fall asleep, but it was far from peaceful. She dreamed of father having a loud argument. She hated seeing him angry and would do anything to stop him yelling at her. Only, he wasn't shouting at her, but someone else. Something about a deal, of how the others would be spared if he sacrificed the girl as agreed. Father pleading to have the chance to find another. When Satya woke, it was back in her own bed, the last of the children to wake. She felt it was a good day. The memories of the night before had dissipated, like so many dreams had before it. Nothing eventful happened from that night onwards. For the next couple of years, life continued as normal, though Abraham drew noticeably more sickly during that time. The children would hear him screaming in pain or wailing sorrowfully from his room on some nights. But when they asked him about it the next morning, he would just smile and tell them not to worry. Even he had bad dreams every now and then, he said. A day eventually came when Abraham gathered all the children and told them that he had nothing left to teach them, and it was time for them to be a part of society. He would not send them out into the world alone, though. He had arranged foster families for everyone in the city. With a teary eye, he hugged each and every one of his children and gave each an envelope containing the precious few dollars that remained of his savings. He closed down the orphanage and he became a recluse, spending the remainder of his life deep in prayer and solitude. After he died, they found only one item of value in his possession: a girl's locket with the name Vanna engraved on the back. They buried it with him. It was a few weeks after the funeral that Satya started noticing the boy again. She had welcomed him into her life in the past, and now he would not leave. Father had tried to make her forget, but she still remembers. That boy, lying in the bed with her, with no eyes, no tongue, just his horrible hissing. No arms, no legs, just stumps, just laying there, staring at her, hissing in agony. It won't let her forget. Whenever she lies in bed, she feels it, breathing on her neck, whispering evils into her ear and tormenting her thoughts, telling her that Abraham did not keep his bargain to make another sacrifice, that Abraham had cheated him through death, and that he will claim what was owed, and she will give it to him. She must sacrifice a child and feed its flesh to another, so that his essence can be passed on, as it now does in her. And if she doesn't choose, he will choose for her, one of her own. She has tried everything to make him go away. Pills, drugs, therapy, priests of all denominations, and now us. Though Steve's hypnotherapy initially helped, the effects faded like a thought lost in the recesses of a distracted mind. As much as she tries to forget the boy, he won't let her. Every night, she hears him hissing beside her, and she is too afraid to open her eyes.